The definition of indigenous food sovereignty to me is very broad. I really look at it as an umbrella term because so many things fall under it. Everything from cultural revitalization to land back to community health, um, nutrition, and it really is important that food sovereignty will mitigate climate change because the answers to our challenges are really rooted in traditional ecological knowledge. And when the land can return to native authority, expertise, governance, and control, it'll be a healthier shared place for everyone. The connection between indigenous food sovereignty and cultural identity is really about social and environmental justice. The foods that we've been dispossessed of are part of our DNA. They're critical to not only our personal health, but the health of the climate. And so we really have a right to have these foods and nourish our bodies and our communities. The role of traditional knowledge is really critical to food sovereignty. One of the challenges we have is the transmission of intergenerational knowledge from our elders to our future generations. And so we really have to engage in the practice of teaching traditional knowledge, everything from stewardship of how we care for our food and cultural resources to harvesting so that we're doing it in a sustainable way, to processing, storage, and essentially consumption. We really need access to our traditional foods and not just during ceremony or holiday. We have to integrate our traditional foods back into our daily lives. There are many challenges for Indigenous communities to achieve food sovereignty. One of the main challenges is access. In California, we were dispossessed of our ancestral territories. We don't have treaties that were ever ratified. So among the 109 tribes, there's less than 500,000 acres of tribal land. Had our treaties been ratified, we would have 7.5 million acres today. So we really need to have these territories that are accessible and under our control and governance to be able to revitalize our traditional foods. Sustainable agricultural practices are very critical to food sovereignty. A lot has been taken from us, and our traditional knowledge was often written and manipulated by academics, mainly anthropologists. They often, if you read about California Native people, they refer to us as hunters and gatherers, or the derogatory term of digger Indian, which really minimizes and tokenizes our relationship with the environment. So our practices were all about sustainable agriculture. And our communities, traditionally, if our communities grew too big, people branched off so that they didn't tax the environment around them. It's about respect, reciprocity, and essentially being able to value and protect our homelands. I've seen a lot of successful initiatives around food sovereignty. We recently, Sarah Culvilson produced the first California Indian cookbook, and we have at the California Indian Museum, we have Acorn Bites, which is basically an acorn protein bar. So I think that our California Native people are being really creative in how we bring back those traditional foods and how our culture changes and shifts so that they're relevant today. Colonial history has severely impacted our traditional food systems. When we look at history, I've heard some of our cultural educators in our community say, kill the food, kill the culture. And when we look back at Spanish missionization, what did they do? They brought foods from Europe, and they brought cattle and pigs and goats that basically destroyed the traditional food gardens of California. They had a great buffet going and eating all our traditional foods, but they pulled those foods out by the root. and ruined our ecosystems. And when you look at the gold rush, the mining practices, hydraulic mining that washed away hillsides, mercury that was put into our rivers and streams, basically making certain fish species extinct. These things have destroyed our foods, and in while destroying those foods, they've destroyed us as well. Our people have dietary related diseases or dying at a very young age or suffering from heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. These are all a result of colonial practices to destroy our food systems. I think it's really important to preserve certain foods, seed varieties, and crop diversity because these foods are becoming extinct. And the more that we replace our ancestral foods with grapes and almonds and all the different crops, oranges that we have in California, we're destroying those food systems. So we have to bring those back. And in the process, we have to be able to preserve those things. So at a later time, when land is back in native control, we can revitalize all of these things. Partnerships are really critical to advancing food sovereignty. We work with different Bay Area native farms in bringing healthy foods to our community. We have to be able to work together in order to maintain land and have access to land that really is under the governance and supervision of people from the place, people from that ancestral territory. Policymakers can support Indigenous communities, number one, by decriminalizing cultural gathering. Gathering without a permit, which is really difficult to obtain because we can't now, because of climate change, predict the 24-hour window when we can gather acorns. If you do that outside of a permit, it's actually a misdemeanor. It's punishable up to $1,000 fine. We should not be criminalized for accessing our traditional resources in our own homelands. That's ridiculous. So we have to examine policy and ensure that policy is inclusive. We can't just say that you have to check a box saying that you're a member of a federally recognized tribe. The identities and the spectrum identities of California Indians due to history is very broad and complex. And so we have to ensure that these policies are inclusive of all California people. The connection between food sovereignty and cultural identity is important. It's a basic human right that our Native people have to access food that's part of their DNA. It's food that will nourish them, food that will keep us healthy. Traditionally, California Indian people had longevity. You know, the story about old Gabriel from one of the missions in Central California is said to have lived 150 years. And so his diet really didn't have sugar or very much meat product. And so we really have to look at those traditional foodways to restore our health and longevity.